Greetings and God bless. So it's my theory that we are in a post-modern coup. We have been infiltrated by postmodernists. Now, what is postmodernism? It's a movement that developed supposedly in the mid to late 20th century across philosophy, arts, architecture, criticism, marking a departure from modernism. And it encompasses a variety of approaches, disciplines, and is defined by an attitude of skepticism, irony, or rejection of grand narratives and ideologies of modernism, calling into question various assumptions of Enlightenment rationality. Common targets of postmodern critique include universalist notions of objective reality, morality, truth, human nature, reason, science, language, and social progress. Postmodern thinkers frequently call attention to the contingent or socially conditioned nature of knowledge claims and value systems, situating them as products of particular political, historical, or cultural discourses and hierarchies. Accordingly, postmodern thought is broadly characterized by tendencies of self referentiality, epistemological and moral relativism, plural, pluralism, and irreverence. Now, is there anything that's been going on that's self referential? That it's all about me and my experience, and who cares about all of humanity? Who cares about all of history? Who cares about anything? It's all about me. It's all about my feelings. It's all about my feelings about my gender, my skin color, history. I get to blame whomever should they not have the proper hue or pronoun or historical uh, pedigree. So I think what we're in is a postmodern attack, and somehow it's worked. And I was listening to this audiobook about literature, and it was also saying how children's literature it allows for stuff that can't be said to adults because children are more open-minded. And what is going on right now in America, in particular, to the children? Like there's this influence and this grooming for sexuality. Like toddlers are supposed to be sexual and they're supposed to have a whole identity at the age of 2, or 7 or something like that. And if anybody has had any life experience, you know that there's a lot of self development that happens even in your teens, even in your 20s, even in your 30s. So that people who are profiteering off of sex change surgeries and the medicalization of this propaganda, of this brainwashing, because for instance, when we had when we believed there were biological women and these biological women had gave birth, that whole enterprise was medicalized, and it was considered a crisis for a woman to have a baby. But it's a kind of a thing, like, if you hear about women in Africa or Asia or Latin America, it's not quite this hysterical, controlled event when a woman has babies. And if we just, consider a couple hundred years ago or even 100 years ago, it wasn't like this whole, you had to have a hospital and you had to have doctors and nurses and IVs and heart monitors and whatever. I mean, I don't know everything that occurs in childhood birth, but anyways, back to this postmodernism. What do you guys think? Do you think that postmodernism explains what is going on, and that it's snuck its way through children and it's snuck its way through people that have access to the children. It's just shocking how it's worked out that way, and it's shocking how there's no true like protectors of children. So if you're interested, I put the link to this one website that's talking about postmodernism, but I'm sure you could look it up. Um, but I just landed on this page, so in case you're interested, postmodernism is an intellectual stance or mode of discourse that rejects the possibility of reliable knowledge. So when they say trust the science, postmodernism says there is no reliable knowledge because it's relative. It's self-referential. So I dictate what is knowledge for everybody because I'm psychotic. That's what that means. I think postmodernism is institutional insanity, and it's the framework for destroying modern Western civilization. But let us continue. Postmodernism denies the existence of a universal, stable reality and frames aesthetics and beauty as arbitrary and subjective. Right. Yeah. Like some of these people who are like actually a majority of the people who are pushing this overthrow of humanity, because that's what it is. They would be somebody who would say that like uh, beauty standards of beauty are arbitrary and subjective. So I was taking the bus today, and there was this huge sculpture. It was like, I don't know, maybe it was 6 stories tall or 5 stories tall. There's these two nondescript humanoid figures that were that tall, 5 or 6 stories tall, uh, and they were white, and they were stick-like figures dancing, and they looked more masculine. So this is the goal. Like that, if you look at your local city, you will see that the sculptures generally, especially newer stuff, it's like a junkyard just dumped in, and the city or the state paid $10,000 or $50,000 for that junk to be there to make you to demoralize you. It's called brutalism. When you see ugly architecture, it's intentional. The people are trying to demoralize you, because why is everybody going to Italy, Venice, beautiful locations in the world? Why do people spend thousands of dollars to go there, to live there, for the summer or something like that? Why? Because it's beautiful, because it's replenishing, because it soothes the soul, because it makes you a better person, and it increases your intelligence. But when we in America, it's like communist America, Marxist America, it's like the ugliest buildings. That's all that's erected. That's all the new housing, and then it's like sold to millionaires. $300,000 apartments that were supposed to be low income, but then it's sold to millionaires because the city is greedy, the county. Um, so yeah, so cities, and then and if the Marxists had their druthers, they would have all the beauty destroyed, because they're like, that's an ism that offends me, you know. So anyway, postmodernism. So let's see. So it's like, yeah, it's rejecting reality. It's rejecting what we know. Postmodernism relies on critical theory. So critical theory is an approach that confronts the ideological, social, and historical structures that shape and constrain cultural production, whatever. That sounds very Marxist, cultural production. Um, okay, let's. Common targets of postmodernism and critical theory includes universalist notions of objective reality. So these are the targets. Objective reality is the target. Morality is the target of postmodernism. Morality is the target of critical theory. Morality, truth is the target of postmodernism. Truth is the target of critical theory. Human nature is the target of postmodernism. Human nature is the target of critical theory. Reason is the target of postmodernism. Reason is the target of critical theory. Reason, okay? Common sense is the target of critical theory of postmodernism. Language itself is the target of postmodernism. Language is the target of critical theory. Where have we been seeing this? Social progress is the target of postmodernism. Social progress is the target of critical theory. Now, liberals call themselves progressive, and maybe that's what they were 20 years ago. But what is progress now is erasing Western everything, erasing the people who we stereotypically think of as Western. And it's just amazing how liberals are like, well, yeah, let's erase the West and white people, even though I'm white and I benefit from Western culture. Let's get rid of it. It's not going to happen to me because I donated to BLM. No, it's going to happen to you. And your children are the biggest targets. So, postmodernistic approaches have been adopted in a variety of academic theoretical disciplines, blah blah blah, and art and music. So postmodern thinkers frequently call attention to the contingent or socially conditioned nature of knowledge, claims, and value systems, situating them as products of a particular political, historic, or cultural discourse and hierarchies. So, knowledge value system are they're not real. They're and I would say knowledge, history, language, it all is seen and used through a lens, but I do not think postmodernists has humanity at heart, at humanity's interests at heart at all. Postmodernists are demonized Satanists, and they just gave themselves this highfalutin, artsy fartsy name, and it's really these are murderers of humanity. That's what postmodernism. They're murderers. They're spiritual, supernatural, paranormal murderers of humanity and of the West. And yeah, they want to take down the West, but ultimately postmodernists, which are Satanists, want to destroy humanity. Satanists hate humans because Satan hates humans. And Satanists not only want to destroy humans, they want to destroy Earth. Why? Because Satan hates Earth. Earth was created by God, and Satan is a poor loser. He lost 2,000 years ago. Jesus defeated him, and Jesus has just been waiting these past 2,000 years for everybody to get the memo. So, Satan has a lot of things, a lot of anger, a lot of things to do in his bucket list. And it is not to leave us alone. It is not to leave the earth alone. It is not to leave the cosmos in peace. What does a very angry, prideful, arrogant being, very powerful being, what does it do when it's been defeated? What does it do when some puny human beings are loved more, are given power over it, right? Like Satan's like, I am more powerful. I've done more for God. How dare he make humans more powerful than me, more meaningful? How dare God love humans more than he loves me? So Satan is longing for the love of God, and he's lost it. He betrayed God. And so Satan is very upset. And so what does somebody who's not well, who's very evil, what does that person do? Well, they upset everything that they possibly can, and they poison everything that they possibly can to try to hurt the their um, enemies' feelings. So, anyway, accordingly, postmodern thought is characterized by tendencies of self referentiality, epistemological, and moral relativism. So, moral relativism means it's relative. Pedophilia is okay as long as everybody likes you, like as long as the adults don't have to be raped by you. It's okay if you rape little children. That's moral relativism, as long as they like you. Pluralism and irreverence. I'm not sure what pluralism is, but irreverence is like, I don't care. I mean, that's what you see. That's what you see in the alphabet soup, folks. That's what you see in the US government. About the housing issue or about employment or about economics. They're like, whatever, like they're irreverent. That they're postmodernists. So, um, so postmodernism is associated with deconstruction and post-structuralism. So, I mean, I thought deconstructing was just kind of taking something apart in order to understand it. So, anyways, I stand corrected. Criticisms of postmodernism include assertions that it promotes obscurantism. So, obscuring, right? So, what has been going on the past 3 years where something has been obscured, where medical chemicals were obscured, where medical processes were obscured, where the results of these medical chemicals were obscured, where the sources of these medical events were obscured? Do you know what I'm talking about? What has been obfuscated? What has been hidden from us the past 3 years has been huge, that has influenced people's medical outcomes? So, critics of postmodernists include assertions that it's meaningless. I would say postmodernism is meaningless. This moral relativism, okay, like it's okay if this attractive pedophile rapes children, but like the ugly pedophile, we don't want the ugly pedophile. That's moral relativism, and that could be anything, right? That's my self-referential moral relativism. So, but also let's get back to meaningless. So I identify as a wall. I identify as a molecule of air. I identify now as a chair. So you don't see me. I'm invisible. You see my chair. Now that's meaningless crap. That's insane drivel that nobody should have to endure. But what are we seeing on the news? What are we seeing on commercials? It's meaningless crap. And like entry level employees are having to deal with the brunt of it the past 3 years. So, uh, and the reason why it's meaningless is because this bolt BS adds nothing to analytical or empirical knowledge. It adds nothing to our understanding of reality or of ourselves. It adds nothing to production of meaningful things like, growing a garden or whatever, like these are not helping anybody except psychotic people. So, uh, philosopher Jürgen Habermas asserts those who employ postmodernist discourse are prey to a performative contradiction and a paradox of self reference. Their critique would be impossible without the concepts and methods that modern reason provides. So, postmodernists cannot actually exist in a vacuum because we are in a reality. We do have reference points. We do have the language that we have. We have gravity, we have light, we have electricity, we have this room. And postmodernists are like, I'm outside, I'm a reality, and you have to respect I'm in space and I'm a hawk and now I'm an amoeba, Okay, so it's their argument does not hold water. Conservatives Michael Oakeshott and Leo Strauss considered postmodernism to be an abandonment of the rationalist project, which many conservatives consider the most important cultural projects of humans. And Leo Strauss sought to restore rationalism to a more skeptical Aristotelian version embedded in the ordinary reality that humans perceived. Others have claimed that persons who are knowledgeable about postmodernism have difficulty distinguishing nonsensical postmodernist architects from those that are nominally genuine. Okay, I'll repeat that. Folks, some have claimed persons who are knowledgeable about postmodernism. So persons who know about postmodernism, folks suggest that experts of postmodernism, that these experts have difficulty distinguishing nonsensical postmodernist artifacts from those that are nominally genuine. So these postmodernists are brainwashed. They're delusional, and they cannot distinguish what's nonsensical from what's somewhat genuine. Like this is nominally genuine. So it's like, like the postmodernist can't even tell, well, I guess this is kind of a white wall behind me. This might be a somewhat of a, nominally. I'm not this is a nominal woman sitting here, maybe, like so these postmodernists can't even tell what's real. So it was the term started being used in 1870, and I wonder if that is because it has some source in Marxism. And let's see, basic features. So they're talking about it in literature and art. And so it just goes into, okay, let's talk about deconstruction. So it's a theory by Derrida. There is no outside text, is something I guess that Derrida wrote. And so some people misinterpreted that there's no reality outside of books. And it's actually a critique of there's no inside or outside. There's a critique of, it's actually a critique of inside and outside metaphors. When referring to texts, and is corollary to the observation that there's no inside of a text as well. Yeah, this is okay. This attention to a text acknowledged reliance on metaphors and figures embedded within its discourse is characteristic of Derrida. Blah 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 philosophy. So there's postmodernism. Oh my gosh. The connection between postmodernism, posthumanism, and cyborgism has led to a challenge to postmodernism, for which terms postmodernism and post-structuralism were first coined in 2003. And the print here is a little hard to read. Let's see if I can get that. In some sense, we may regard postmodernism, posthumanism, post-structuralism, etc., as being the cyborg age of mind over body. Deconference was an exploration in post-cyborgism, i.e., what comes after post-corporeal era. So this post-cyborg realm comes after the post-corporeal. So it's post-body, post in the body, and thus explores issues of postmodernism, post-structuralism, and the like. To understand this transition from POMO, cyborgism, to POPO, post-cyborgism, we must first understand the cyborg era itself. And this was written in 2003. So, So this is they're just talking about the death of postmodernism. I think it's been going on. I think it's alive and well, and I think it's taken over. And they're talking about Derrida and deconstructional, deconstruction, and okay, Michel Foucault, French philosopher, historian of ideas, social theorist, literary critic. He was associated with structuralism, and so he was a leading light of French theory. His work remains fruitful in academia. Most cited author in the humanities. Introduced concepts of discursive regime and okay, well, doesn't really help. Okay, blah blah blah. So they're talking about architecture, manifestations of postmodernism, and it's just ugly, ugly stuff. So a characteristic of postmodern graphic design is retro, techno, punk, grunge, beach, parody, and pastiche. So that's very interesting, huh? Then literature, this kind of adult, um, kind of fantasy, like Jorge Luis Borges. Um, but they're talking about Nabokov, Umberto Eco, Burroughs, Vonnegut. Okay, I don't know these other authors. Okay, about music, different composers like Philip Glass, urban planning. And I think some of what's good is appropriated by evil. I think there's good people. So okay, so Noam Chomsky, who's described as anarcho-syndicalist linguist and philosopher, argued that postmodernism is meaningless because it adds nothing to analytical or empirical knowledge. He asks why postmodernist intellectuals do not respond like people in other fields when asked, what are the principles of their theories? On what evidence are they based? What do they explain that wasn't already obvious, etc.? If these requests can't be met, then I'd suggest recourse to Hume's advice in similar circumstances to the flames. So, it's that's it's disposable if you can't provide any background to your thesis, to your revolution. It's garbage. So this guy, William Lane Craig, the idea that we live in a postmodern culture is a myth. In fact, most postmodern culture is an impossibility. It would be utterly unlivable. People are not relativistic. So we are not relative when it comes to matters of science. Relative about this building. Like, is it on a solid foundation or isn't it not? The architect can't be like an LBG. Well, it's relative. I identified that this building is structurally sound. Who cares about earthquakes? Who cares about floods? Who cares about mold? Who cares about pest infestation? Like, you can't be morally relative about the engineering of a road, of a bridge, of lighting, of water mains. So, American academic and aesthete Camille Paglia has asserted the end result of 4 decades of postmodernism permeating the art world is that there is very little interesting or important work being done right now in the fine arts. Irony was a bold and creative posture when Duchamp did it, but now it's utterly banal, exhausted, and tedious strategy. Young artists have been taught to be cool and hip and thus painfully self conscious. They're not encouraged to be enthusiastic, emotional, and visionary. They've been cut off from the artistic tradition of the crippled skepticism about history that they have been taught by ignorant and solipsistic postmodernists. In short, the art world will never revive until postmodernism fades away. Postmodernism is a plague upon the mind and the heart. Woo! Yay, Camille Paglia. Okay. So there's uh, something written about postmodernism by a physicist. He said this Sokal. Uh, um, I guess this is a person named Alan Sokal wrote a nonsense article in a style similar to postmodernist art articles, which was accepted for publication by the Postmodern Cultural Studies Journal. Socialist Nagel has supported Sokal and Breckmont, these two folks, describing their book "Fashionable Nonsense" is consisting largely of extensive quotations of scientific gibberish from name-brand French intellectuals, together with eerily patient explanations of why it is gibberish, and agreeing that there does seem to be something about the Parisian scene that is particularly hospitable to reckless verbosity. Now, I am really wondering about France somehow being this seat of like the Bolsheviks. It seems like the Red Terror didn't it start there, and then it went to Russia, and then Asia, China. So I think there's something about France that foments sick and twisted stuff. Like, yes, the Germans did Nazi stuff or whatever it is that happened in Germany. I mean, there's all this controversy, but um, like I'm, as much as I'm like, I want to go to France and, go to the farmers markets and stuff like that. France really seems to have some sort of problem. I don't know. It just seems to be like a hotbed for the worst of humanity. I'm sorry to say. So, anyways, a more recent example of the difficulty of distinguishing nonsensical artifacts from genuine postmodernist scholarship is the grievance studies affair. The French psychotherapist and philosopher Philippe Guattari is often considered a postmodernist, rejected its theoretical assumptions by arguing that the structuralist and postmodernist visions of the world were not flexible enough to seek explanations in psychological, social, and environmental domains at the same time. Okay. I don't really understand that, but okay. Christopher Hitchin, he wrote Why Orwell Matters. The postmodernist's tyranny wears people down by boredom and semi-literate prose. Analytic philosopher David Denney declared postmodernism the school of thought that proclaimed there are no truths, only interpretations, has largely played itself out in absurdity, but it has left behind a generation of academics in the humanities disabled by their distrust of the very idea of truth. So the academics in academia, in schools, do not trust truth. They disrespect evidence. They don't trust the science, and they settle for conversations, opinions, where nobody's wrong and nothing can be confirmed, only asserted with whatever style you can muster. So the one who can be the most hysterical, the one who can be the most hoity-toity, the one who has the most leverage socially, the one who has the best makeup and hair wins. It's not science, it's not evidence, it's just clout. That's what postmodernism is. American historian Richard Wolin traces the origins of postmodernism to intellectual roots in fascism. Aha! So postmodernism has its roots in fascism. And where does fascism have its roots? I believe Marxism. Where does Marxism have its roots? Satanism. So Robert Richard Mullins writes, postmodernism has been nourished by the doctrines of Friedrich Nietzsche, who I think was a biological female, a female to male trans deceiver. So postmodernism has been nourished by the doctrines of Nietzsche, Heidegger, Maurice Blanchot, and Paul de Man, all of whom either prefigured or succumbed to the proverbial intellectual fascination with fascism. So fascism is like the state controlling industry. So it's like everything is kind of Marxism. It's just different implementations. Um, so, anyways, let's see. So, postmodern era captivates the radical multiculturalists with its rejection. According to the new radicals, the Enlightenment inspired ideas that have previously structured our world, especially the legal and academic parts of it, are a fraud, perpetuated by white males to consolidate their own power. Now, I do think that everything is manipulated, and the founders, I do think there has been fraud, but I don't think it's just white people. I think just whoever's in the secret societies have committed a fraud. But we still have gravity, we still have oxygen, we still have the color spectrum. I mean, you can't. We still have male and female only, except for some hermaphrodites or a couple more superficial things, skin deep kind of things. It's not this relativism about everything about existence is nonsense, is meaningless. So then these postmodernists say, those who disagree that the Enlightenment inspired ideas were a fraud, they are then anybody who disagrees about the Enlightenment being a fraud are then considered blind and a bigot. So this is postmodernism, folks. The Enlightenment's goal of an objective and reasoned basis for knowledge, merit, truth, justice, and the like is an impossibility. So these postmodernists are saying it's impossible to be objective. And, some things it is hard to be objective, but you can be objective. Like, let's put this on a scale. Let's make sure the scale is correct and weigh this. Like, there are ways of objectively measuring something. So objective, we can just prove it right now that objectivity is a reality, it's realistic, and it's not impossible. So what are these postmodernists are crazy, they're stupid, they're being willfully stupid. So these postmodernists are saying reason, and I would say common sense. These postmodernists consider reason, and I would say common sense, are just code word for privileged. So they're trying to say, if you're using common sense, if you have reason, then you're just being an elitist. You're just being a bigoted white person, white heterosexual, whatever. The Enlightenment itself, they say, replaced one socially constructed view of reality with another, mistaking power for knowledge. So the postmodernists are saying there's nothing but power. Well, what the postmodernists, the Satanists, they want power. That's all they want. They don't even care about truth. Richard Caputo, William Epstein, David Stouts, and Bruce Dyer consider postmodernism to be a dead end in social work epistemology. They write, postmodernism continues to have a detrimental influence on social work, questioning the Enlightenment, criticizing established research methods, and challenging scientific authority. The promotion of postmodernism by editors of social work and the Journal of Social Work Education has elevated postmodernism, placing it on par with theoretically guided and empirically based research. The inclusion of postmodernism in the 2008 Educational Policy and Accreditation Standards of the Council on Social Work Education in its 2015 sequel further erode the knowledge-building capacity of social work educators. In relation to other disciplines that have exploited empirical methods, social work's stature will continue to ebb until postmodernism is rejected in favor of scientific methods for generating knowledge. So, this is saying that in social work, they're like, science is not real. We can't trust what we know. We can't trust what we've measured, and the reality we have based all of our experience upon the past few thousand years because it was composed and given to us by white heterosexual men. So that's all garbage. So we have to now be in this nebulous, I don't know space of bigotry of our own. Like we've got to be a bigot to Christian white heterosexual males of the past and right in front of us. So that's social work for you. And who's accessing social work? It's Vietnam veterans who went to the Vietnam War, who went to the wars in the Middle East in the late 80s and early 90s. It's white guys. Yes, there's some black people and probably some Asian and Hispanic or whatever, but that's who's the homeless. Like what I notice is the majority of homeless that I see are white men and women and black guys. I don't see any Hispanic. I don't see any Asian. At least here in Colorado. H. Sidke pointed out what he sees as several inherent flaws of a postmodern anti-science perspective. So, including the confusion of the authority of science evidence with the scientist conveying the knowledge. It's self-contradictory claim that all truths are relative, and it's strategic ambiguity. So that's the thing. It's like postmodernism, and I'd call it this CRT and this environmental movement and the what's the other one? The alphabet soup stuff. It's confused and it's self-contradictory and it's ambiguous. Now, what I just saw yesterday that advanced placement courses are being offered only to people of color, and I mean black and Hispanic. They don't list Asians as being allowed to be in the advanced placement, and white people are exclusively not allowed to attend advanced placement courses, AP courses in this particular school. But they allow all genders. Now, what I'm wondering is, are these traditional people who have immigrated here, whether across the border illegally or imported by a local progressive liberal white guilt kind of a thing? Because that's what I've observed. I was in Montana, and the locality, like there was a less than 1% vacancy rate, so there was no place for entry level workers to find a rental, much less somebody to move here from another country. But what the local area city did is they purchased homes that were probably $500,000, around. They bought people their homes. They bought people a new truck, and just gave them food stamps for their large families. And so these people came from Africa, and it wasn't a war-torn area or whatever. And I heard this directly from a social worker that was working with multiple families from this country. And so these people from Africa, they assumed that all Americans were given a new home, given a new car. And the thing is, where I was in Montana, is there was a lot of homeless people as well. There were like working class people who couldn't afford, couldn't find a place, and the places they could afford was just it was just a terrible place. And because when there's less than 1% vacancy rate, landlords can do whatever they want. They can do just short of raping and killing a person, they can do whatever they want. And so anyways, what I wonder with all these people who have relocated here, for whatever reason, like they're not expected to change their gender and to have blue hair and to surrender their children to the Satanists right now. Um, they're allowed to have their traditions. Like a Mexican woman is not expected to not regard herself as a woman. A Mexican woman's not expected to not want to have a baby, and a Mexican man isn't like expected to think he's a woman or that his wife should be a man or something like that. But in the psychotic, progressive left white world, white people, I don't know what's up with the white people, but they're not saying anything. They're not they're paralyzed. I mean, is everybody on drugs? Probably, maybe, or so fragile, like maybe so economically on the edge that they don't have the courage to speak up. And it's madness that we can't even say what's reality, especially if you're a white person. You are. It's this weird kind of prison that we're in. And I grew up in New York City, and in the 70s and 80s, there would be black kids, black people that were dangerous and scary. And as a white person, we just, like on the bus or whatever among my family, like everybody would just be like, just kind of be paralyzed until things blew over, until the assault was over. And in the 90s, I lived in San Francisco, and there would be a lot of very angry black people that would terrorize everybody on the bus, or, it was pretty much on the bus. Yeah, not so much like walking on the sidewalk. But, and everybody, all the white people, because we're just trying to get home, or we're just trying to get to work or get to the store. And and black people knew that they could just do whatever they want. They knew that these white city people weren't going to do anything. And so they would just run crazy. Like they would just be really, really bad people. And, all the time, I mean, like, for all the warfare of black people, black inner city people have done to me personally, or to white people, like we never were like, we're just like, these people are not well, these people are being bad. But it wasn't like, I never was like, it was just, it was the worst. It was people behaving really badly. And I've got to say, Japanese people, Chinese people, even like Latino people, or, I don't know, the hundreds of other cultures I've been around, have not behaved that way. Just saying. And these people who were so abusive to everybody on the bus, or the train or whatever, like they are people who live in the projects generally, and just were very antisocial, and maybe they needed to be in a mental institution or something like that, because they just wanted to cause harm. They were like demonically possessed people. They just wanted to make everybody scared and uncomfortable and miserable, and they got to. So, anyways, back to postmodernism. Many of those indoctrinated in postmodern anti-science went on to become conservative, political and religious leaders, policymakers, journalists, journal editors, judges, lawyers, and members of city councils and school boards. Sadly, they forgot the lofty ideas of their teachers, except that science is bogus. So this is H. Sidkey. So, anyways, I think I have rambled at length about postmodernism, the coup that has taken over not only America, I think the world, and it's ridiculous. Like, we need to just um, be responsible and use uh, reason, use common sense, use the facts. And um, so these irreverent, insulting, self-referential, mentally ill, malignant narcissists, Satanists, demonically possessed beings, they're not right. And even though we may not be able to counter every one of their demonic arguments, they are evil. They are the epitome of evil because um, they're they want to harm. They're doing harm. They're harming individuals. They're harming everybody around them, and they are harming everybody. They're just harming society. And unfortunately, these postmodernist demons are in charge. You know, they are like Freemasonic people placed in all the positions of the trusted agents of the public good. And you know, we have observed the impacts of their behaviors, their agenda. And I do believe it's the end of the world. I do believe we're in the end times. So what we do is we do our best. Like, so we remain sober. We remain sober. We pray, and we hold fast. You know, we keep the armor of God on. And just because a progressive liberal Satanist has a meltdown and screams and screams and screams, and their throat is as sepulchers, like just hearing them speak is just so vile. Like there's just serpents coming out of their mouths as they're talking. Um, like, you know, it's hard. It's like disgusting. We are we're among the most vile beings ever created, and they, you know, there's just no shame, and there's so many different demons out. Um, so it's not just like one or two kind of styles. It's an assault on a lot of different levels, and these demonized people who are like crossing the border, I think they think that they're going to have some sort of opportunity. I think they think they're going to do their attack somewhere and then be able to buy a home and you know, settle down and, you know, live in South Dakota and raise sheep or something like that. I think they think that you know, they sold their soul just for a month, and they think that everything's going to be fine. But it is the end of the world. It is the end of time, and Jesus promised to return. So we're not going to be able to fix it, but we can still be anchored. We can still be grounded, and just remind people of what reality is. We can just, yes, this is, we have facts, and there's gravity, and there's oxygen, and we have the periodic table, and we have the numbers 1 and 2, and 1 plus 2. What does that equal? Equals 2. Okay, we're not in a psychotic, postmodern, relativistic, self you know, changing. Well, 1 plus 1 to me means 52. You know, like uh, that's insanity. And unfortunately, a lot of these postmodernists are insane people. and they're getting paid to be insane. And maybe some of them know better, but they're like, well, I just want my paycheck, so I'm just going to throw humanity under the bus and uh, do this postmodern shtick because I'm an opportunist. I think there's a lot of opportunists, and maybe, they're placeholders. Maybe in the end they will um, do good things. But yeah, I think we're in a postmodern coup. So, what do you guys think? God bless.